Hi there, my name is Brian Harrison and I'm a Cloud Solution Architect with Microsoft, and I'd like to welcome you back to the Azure 101 series focused on networking. In this particular video, we're going to take a look at the virtual private gateways, which are a number of services that combine together to provide a VPN connection between some external network and one of your Azure virtual networks. So as you can see, all of these videos are tying together because everything is a part of the virtual network. So with that, let's head on over into our portal. Now, I do not have a VPN device here at home. So unfortunately, I cannot actually create all of the services that are made up of a VPN connection. But what I can do is show you what the requirements are for each of them. So let's first go ahead on into our resource group. And then we're going to open up the all services and take a look at what is available under networking. So under networking here, we've got our virtual networks, load balancers, application gateways, and so on. But the items that we want to look at today are the virtual network gateways and the local network gateways. Now, if you happen to be deploying a direct connection, meaning you're using ExpressRoute to provide direct connectivity over a physical circuit from your external network to your virtual network, then you would also be implementing an ExpressRoute circuit. I'm not going to go through that particular process because not every customer requires that. But if you any other kind of VPN, and all VPN connectivities are going to require virtual network gateways, local network gateways. Now, if you'll remember from the blog post itself, I actually specified what the differences were. The virtual network gateway being the connection point on the Azure side that defines which virtual network you're going to be connecting to, and the local network gateway defining your VPN device on your external network. But before either of these things can actually be done, you actually have to have something in your virtual network that says, I am ready for a VPN connection. And that is actually a special subnet. Much like the Azure Firewall requires its own special subnet, there is a special subnet called the Gateway subnet that is required, and it basically states that this virtual network is going to allow hybrid connectivity from an external network. So we click on the Gateway subnet. You don't have the ability to change the name. You can specify your IP address range. The reasoning behind that is because every virtual network has the ability to support multiple VPN connections, whether it's multiple point-to-site connections where you've got multiple developers coming in, or multiple site-to-site connections where you've got multiple data centers all needing site-to-site access to a specific virtual network, or even perhaps you have multiple ExpressRoute circuits coming from multiple data centers into a single region and a single virtual network. So you define your IP address range. You can specify a route table if you want all traffic coming from the external network into your Azure virtual network to say go through a virtual appliance, a virtual appliance of some kind. You can make that the next hop before actually going to its final destination. And then, of course, you can turn on service endpoints and subnet delegation. But most customers, I will say, just set up a standard gateway subnet with some level of an IP range. If you know it's just going to be one ExpressRoute circuit, you can probably keep that range fairly small. I'm going to go ahead and set mine up here, so that it'll make it a little bit easier for us to walk through the local and virtual network gateways. So we've now got our gateway subnet. Now, let's go back over into our resource group, and we're going to add some new resources. Now, as I said, I'm not going to be able to walk all the way through this, but I should be able to get through the majority of it. So let's take a look at the virtual network gateway first. That's the piece that's on the Azure side. So we will open that one up. Click Create. And here we are. Give it a name first. So Azure 101 VPN. You specify the gateway type. whether it's a point-to-site, site-to-site, that falls under the VPN category, or obviously if you're running a physical circuit, you're going to be using ExpressRoute. So I'm going to leave it as VPN. You can then specify route-based or policy-based. Now, I am by no means a networking engineer. My best friend is. I've had him explain this to me. This is going to be very much dependent on the VPN device on your external network. It will specify whether it is a policy-based or a route-based VPN device for how it handles traffic. Once you know that, you can specify which one of these it is. I'm just, for the sake of argument, going to leave it at route-based. I will say that route-based is the most common that I know of from my customers. You can then specify the size of the VPN gateway, the specific SKU. This is going to determine the bandwidth that's going to be available from your on-prem network to the Azure Virtual Network in Azure. So I'm just going to leave it as VPN GW1. You can also enable active mode if you want to allow for 2 circuits to be used or 2 gateways to be used for the same set of traffic. We then choose our virtual network, and this is only going to show virtual networks that have the gateway subnet defined. If you do not have any, then this would come up blank. So luckily, we have our Azure 101 VNet that's got the gateway subnet. We can then specify a public IP address. And the reasoning for that is because your VPN device on your local network or your external network has to know who to talk to. It can't just talk to a virtual network. It has to have some public endpoint, because remember, these are IPsec tunnels going across the internet. It has to have that public IP address to talk to. So we're going to create a new one, giving it a basic SKU, and we'll just say VPN, let's go, Azure 101 VPN IP. You can then specify whether or not you want to configure BGP. This is very advanced networking, not something I can help you decide on. You're going to need to work with your networking engineers on that. Specify the subscription, specify the location. And it's going to default to the location of where your virtual network is, because it does need to be in the same place. So this one I can absolutely go ahead and create because of the fact that this is running inside of Azure. The local network gateway, on the other hand, I will not be able to finish. But let's go ahead and click on the Create button. And while this is running in the background, let's go ahead and create our new local network gateway and take a look at what that looks like. There we go, local network gateway. Click Create. Now, this one's going to be fairly straightforward because the majority of the information is going to be coming from you or your networking engineers who understand the VPN device that is going to be at the endpoint of your external network. So you're going to give this a name. You're going to then specify the IP address of your VPN device. So this needs to be an externally facing IP, therefore an externally facing device, so that the 2 endpoints can talk to one another. You can then specify an address space. This is going to be the address space in your external network that traffic can flow back into. So these local network gateways actually will lock down traffic. It's not like you're just opening up a gigantic hole from Azure into your external network. You're actually allowing for that traffic to flow, but only into a specific IP address range. Now, every customer I've ever worked with defines their local networks using private IPs, such as 10 dots or 192 dots. You're then basically saying, hey, look, once you've made it in through the VPN device, here are the IPs that are available to you. Once again, you can configure BGP settings, and then you specify your subscription, your resource group, and your location again. Once you've done this, and actually, why don't I just go ahead and put in a dummy IP address just for the heck of it, because there still needs to be one other piece to this puzzle, and that's that the 2 need to be connected together. So let me just put in a dummy IP of 13.45.67.193, or 183 apparently. we'll put in an IP address range of 10.23.0.0/16. And as you can see, you can put in multiple IP address ranges. And then I'm going to specify the Azure 101 resource group. Now, as you and I both know, I have no idea what this IP address is. This is never ever actually going to work, but I want you to see the entire life cycle of how these things come together. So I've gone through the validation process. It is now creating my local network gateway. And if we go back under our resource group, we've got our virtual network gateway, but the local network gateway is not quite ready yet. As soon as it is, we'll come back and get started. Okay, as you can see here in my resource group, I've got my local network gateway and my virtual network gateway. Now, in fact, the Azure 101 VPN, the virtual network gateway, is actually still provisioning, and it basically what is happening is that the resource itself has been created, but the IP address hasn't been applied to it yet, and it hasn't been completely associated and put into the virtual network and specifically into the gateway subnet. But the main piece that I want to show you, I can show you inside of the local network gateway, and that's the connections item. Now, both of the gateways are going to have configurations where you can actually go in and modify what you've defined for the configuration, such as the address range for the local network gateway and the outgoing IP address. But the main piece is you actually have to connect the two together. Otherwise, the traffic's never going to flow. So what you actually have to do under here is click under Add, under Connections, and this is then where you're going to create a connection between the virtual network gateway and the local network gateway. So this is the Azure 101 connection. You then specify a connection type, whether it's site-to-site or point-to-site. In this particular case, it is site-to-site. You then choose your virtual network gateway. Now, as I said, the one that I just created is still being provisioned, so I cannot actually select it as of yet. But once you've done that, you then also have to put in, and this is the reason why I wanted to walk through this, you actually have to have the shared key, which is something that comes out of your VPN device. The Azure Virtual Network Gateway needs to know how to talk back and forth over an encrypted IPsec tunnel with your VPN device. And the only way it can do that is to know what that shared key is to be able to encrypt and decrypt that traffic accordingly. You'll need to work with your specific networking engineer in order to get that particular value to plug into here. Of course, this connection is going to go into the same resource group where the devices are and the subscription and region, hence why they are grayed out. The last thing I would like to show, but unfortunately I can't, is if you're going to be using point-to-site instead of site-to-site, then there is a way to turn on that particular configuration, but that's currently only available inside of the virtual network gateway. That being said, the majority of the customers I have worked with, if they're using VPN connections versus ExpressRoute connections, then the majority of them are doing site-to-site. I actually have not worked with a lot of customers that are doing point-to-site unless they have contractors in other countries and they need them to be allowed access into a specific virtual network. So this is everything that you need to be able to understand the basics around VPN connections, virtual private gateways inside of Azure. Hopefully this was good, and I will talk to you in the next video.